For almost 2,000 years, it's been a memory, a quiet prayer, whispered at the Western Wall for a day that always seemed impossibly far away. The Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The place where God's presence once dwelled on earth was gone. But what if the waiting is over? What if the prophetic clock, after centuries of silence, has started ticking so loud you can't ignore it anymore? For those watching the signs, they're becoming undeniable. Prophecy watchers are pointing to a shocking timeline centered on 2025, a narrative being pushed by influential rabbis and temple advocacy groups in Israel. It's a timeline they claim perfectly aligns with a 2,600-year-old prophecy from the Book of Daniel. We're about to explore the proposed timeline that suggests the most controversial and significant building on Earth might be on the verge of being built. This isn't just a news story. It's about ancient scripture, modern geopolitics, and a spiritual hunger that could change our world forever. Stay with us as we unpack the 2025 narrative that some believe will fulfill ancient prophecy. Are we living through the final countdown to the construction of the Third Temple? The idea is staggering, not just for Judaism, but for Christianity and Islam as well. The Bible is interpreted by many to say a third temple must exist before the return of Jesus Christ. It's a critical landmark on the prophetic map, a signpost for the final events of our age. For many Christians, the rebuilding is the ultimate blessed hope, a clear signal that the King is coming. But for the world, it's a geopolitical powder keg, with the potential to ignite a global conflict of unimaginable scale. To understand the buzz around 2025, we have to go back to the words of the prophets and the divine blueprint they laid out thousands of years ago. The idea of a third temple isn't a modern invention. It's a thread woven through biblical prophecy, seen by many scholars as a non-negotiable part of the end-time story. Three key prophecies form the foundation of this belief. First, there's the prophet Daniel. While in Babylon around the 6th century BC, the angel Gabriel gave him one of the most detailed prophecies in Scripture, the 70 weeks in Daniel chapter 9. This prophecy outlines a timeline for Israel, predicting Jerusalem's rebuilding, the coming of an anointed one, Messiah, his cutting off, and the later destruction of the city and its sanctuary. History seems to confirm this. Jesus the Messiah was cut off during his crucifixion, and just as foretold, Roman armies destroyed Jerusalem and the Second Temple in 70 AD. But the prophecy doesn't stop there. Daniel 9 verse 27 speaks of a final 7-year period where a figure, often identified as the Antichrist, makes a treaty with Israel. Crucially, the verse says that in the middle of this period, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. For a sacrifice to be stopped, there must be a temple where sacrifices are happening. This single verse is one of the most powerful arguments for a future, rebuilt third temple operating during what many call the tribulation. Second, Jesus himself seemed to confirm Daniel's prophecy. In Matthew 24, as his disciples admired the Second Temple, Jesus made a stunning declaration. "Do you not see all these things? Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." 40 years later, it happened. But then Jesus described the signs of his second coming and pointed right back to Daniel. In Matthew 24, verse 15, he warns, "So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." The holy place is widely understood to mean the temple. For this prophecy to be fulfilled, a physical temple would need to be standing in Jerusalem in the last days. It's the stage for this pivotal event. Third, the Apostle Paul adds even more detail in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. He assures believers that the day of the Lord won't come until a great rebellion happens, and the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist, is revealed. And what does this man do? Paul writes that he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. The language seems unmistakable. This doesn't sound like a metaphor. Paul appears to be talking about a literal temple, where this figure will commit the ultimate blasphemy. Together, Daniel, Jesus, and Paul establish the third temple, not as a matter of if, but when. The question prophecy watchers are now asking is when now? Is the 2025 narrative the trigger for this final chapter? For decades, the dream of a third temple was kept alive by a small, dedicated group. But recently, and especially heading into 2025, that dream has been morphing into what they see as an actionable plan. These preparations aren't secret. They are led by groups like the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, which has spent over 30 years preparing to rebuild the Holy Temple. They've recreated over 70 sacred vessels, woven priestly garments, and have been training men of priestly descent to renew the divine service. They have a temple in waiting. All that's missing is the building itself and the means to purify it.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos. This is where the timeline for 2025 comes into focus, and it all centers on one of the most unique requirements in biblical law, the red heifer. According to the book of Numbers chapter 19, the ashes of a perfect, unblemished red heifer are needed for the waters of purification, which are essential for cleansing the priests and the temple grounds. For 2,000 years, a qualifying animal was not found. Then, a bombshell for prophecy watchers. In September 2022, 5 red heifer candidates were flown from Texas to Israel. The countdown began. The hope among these groups was to perform the sacrifice in 2024 or 2025 once the heifers were old enough. This was seen as the final key to unlocking the third temple, and the anticipation was huge. But then came a reported setback. In the summer of 2025, the Temple Institute announced that the heifers had been examined and were no longer qualified. Some had apparently grown non-red hairs, making them imperfect under the strict biblical standard. A practice ceremony was reportedly held with one of the disqualified animals, but it was just a rehearsal. To the outside world, it looked like the 2025 timeline had fallen apart. For those inside the movement, however, this was a catalyst, not an ending. The search for a red heifer hasn't stopped. In fact, there are reports of more candidates being bred and raised. The disqualification of the first batch only created a more frantic sense of urgency. This leads to the supposed shocking announcement that defines the 2025 narrative. It wasn't a decree from the Israeli government, which officially maintains a fragile status quo. Instead, it was a declaration of intent from the temple movement itself. In August 2025, during Tisha B'Av, the fast day commemorating the destruction of the first two temples, the Temple Institute posted a message that sent shockwaves through the prophecy community. An image of a wristwatch with the third temple on its face was paired with the words, "Synchronize your watches, it's time to build." This was a public escalation, a shift from mourning the past to actively demanding a future. It represents the core of their 2025 strategy to shift public consciousness in Israel from passive waiting to active demand. They are leveraging social media, holding conferences, and lobbying sympathetic members of the Knesset to push the Third Temple discussion into the mainstream. They argue that building God a house is a biblical command that can't wait for political convenience. Their timeline isn't based on a government calendar, but on what they see as a divine one. You can't talk about building a third temple without addressing the massive obstacle on the mount, the gold-plated dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site. They sit directly on the Temple Mount, the location of the first two temples. For a third temple to be built, many believe those structures would have to be removed or relocated. The idea is so explosive that the Israeli government's official policy is to maintain the status quo, which forbids Jewish prayer on the Mount and leaves its administration to the Jordanian Islamic Waqf. Any attempt to change this would be seen by the Muslim world as an act of war. Yet, in recent years, the status quo has been repeatedly challenged. Nationalist religious figures in Israel's government, like National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, have made provocative visits to the Temple Mount, openly praying in defiance of the rules and declaring Jewish sovereignty over the site. While the Prime Minister's office insists the status quo hasn't changed, the actions of these ministers tell a different story. They are deliberately testing boundaries and conditioning the public for a new reality. This has created an internal conflict. While vocal activist groups push aggressively for rebuilding, they remain a minority. Most Israelis are more concerned with security and daily life than a theological building project. However, relentless pressure from activists, combined with a growing sense of national identity, is slowly shifting the conversation. Prophecy watchers speculate on several scenarios that could clear the Temple Mount. Some hope for a peaceful solution, where Muslim leaders might agree to relocate the mosques. Others point to more dramatic possibilities, a major regional war, like the one described in Psalm 83 or Ezekiel 38, that results in a decisive Israeli victory, giving them the political capital to clear the mount. Another theory involves a catastrophic event like an earthquake that could damage or destroy the existing structures. Whatever the scenario, the path to a third temple is filled with danger. Its construction wouldn't just be an architectural challenge, it would be a spiritual and geopolitical earthquake. It could be the event that triggers the final 7-year covenant prophesied by Daniel, a deal brokered by a charismatic global leader offering false peace for permission to build. This figure, the Antichrist, would be hailed as a peacemaker, only to enter that temple and declare himself God, just as the Apostle Paul foretold. So where does this all leave us? We're seeing a unique convergence of events. On one side, there are the tireless preparations of groups like the Temple Institute, with sacred vessels and garments ready for service. We see their public calls to build escalating, targeting 2025 as a pivotal year to shift public opinion. And we see a bold political movement in Israel challenging the status quo on the Temple Mount. All of this is happening under the shadow of ancient prophecies from Daniel, Jesus, and Paul that require a third temple in the last days. On the other side, are immense obstacles. The disqualification of the red heifers was a real setback, even if it fueled more urgency. The Israeli government has not sanctioned this project, and the majority of its people aren't calling for it. Most importantly, the Dome of the Rock stands as a seemingly insurmountable barrier, a flashpoint for a potential world war. We are living in a moment of profound prophetic tension. The pieces are moving on a global chessboard, and the center square is a 37-acre compound in Jerusalem. The idea of a third temple is no longer a fringe fantasy. It's a tangible goal being actively pursued by a dedicated movement. For believers, the fulfillment of this prophecy would be a glorious sign of Christ's return, but it could also trigger the darkest period in human history, the Great Tribulation. The Bible's command is not to fear, but to watch and pray. The events unfolding around Jerusalem are a message for the world. Jesus is coming soon. What do you think? Are these preparations the fulfillment of prophecy or the ambitions of a dedicated minority? Do you believe a third temple will be built in our lifetime? Let us know your thoughts below. This is a developing story, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If you want to stay updated on the prophetic signs surrounding the third temple, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. The next few years could change everything. Keep looking up.
Feeling anxious or disconnected? Ready for a deeper faith journey designed just for you? Discover Bible Study for Black Women. This guide nurtures faith, strength, and growth week by week. Overcome fear and connect with God. This empowering journey is waiting. Find Bible Study for Black Women on Amazon today and start building unshakable faith.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.